The three initial philosophers in Western civilization were known as the natural philosophers. They looked past the mythological explanation of the epic poets and wanted physical answers from the natural world to answer the question, what is the world made of? The first philosopher in Western civilization was Thales, and he believed that this one underlying substance that made up the world was water. He believed that because it was the most plentiful of all the elements on earth. It was required for all living things to exist, and it was the only element that he knew of that existed in all three states of nature, in a solid, a liquid, and a gas, naturally in the world. So for Thales, that was the obvious answer to the problem, what is the world made out of? But his student Anaximander disagreed. He realized quickly that fire, which was one of the four key Greek elements, was destroyed by water. So it was impossible for fire to be made out of water since they cancel each other out. So he believed that there had to be another substance, something beyond the four Greek elements, that made up everything else. And he just called it basically the stuff, this boundless stuff that exists underneath the four elements. That it wasn't one of the four elements, it was some underlying stuff that lied underneath it. The student of Anaximander is Anaximenes, and he disagreed with Anaximander. He returned to Thales' idea that the substance had to be one of those four key Greek elements, and he believed that it was air. And he argued that air could transform into any other type of object, either through the process of rarefaction, which is becoming less dense, or condensation, where it becomes more dense. That air could transform into every other type of object in the world. Now, why are the natural philosophers important? When we look at their ideas today using our scientific methods and our technology, their ideas are ridiculous. None of those are good answers to the question of what is the world made out of. Why they're important is they've started to look beyond mythological explanations and explanations that relied on the gods. They look to the natural world around them to get their answers of what is the world made out of. And this step away from the gods toward the use of human reason and looking at the natural world is the first step of Western philosophy to break away from mythology and found its own ideology and branch of study. A few vocabulary words I need you to know. First is myth, and that's a sacred or traditional tale that helps guide people in their lives. The Greeks were great at making myths. The epic poets included them everywhere. But there is a distinction between mythology and philosophy. Mythology relies on the gods to do things, whereas philosophy relies on human beings to understand the physical world around them and maybe even the actions of the gods, but it relies on human knowledge. The second is psyche, which means being the state of being alive or having the breath of life. The Greek gods literally believed that when you were born, that god Psyche blew life into you, and at death, that life force, that breath of life was sucked away. Logos is an underlying principle of the universe that stays constant while all else changes, and this is going to become very important as we move forward to understand the logos of the universe. Arche, on the other hand, is an actual substance that the universe is made out of. Logos is the idea or principle, whereas arche is the physical substance. And then Anaximander's belief that there was some underlying, limitless, boundless, infinite stuff that made up the universe, his word for that was operon. So I also need you to know the word operon means limitless, boundless, infinite stuff that the world might be made out of.